Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jean Thill, and on today's show, we have Father Richard Veras. He is the Director of Pastoral Formation and Associate Professor of Homiletics at St. Joseph's Seminary in Dunwoodie. He has joined us because he was here for the ordination of
Deacon Luke. Now Deacon Luke.
I know,
yeah,
I'm like, Deacon. Yeah,
always
Deacon
wonderful to have a representative
Moen.
of the seminary. And, of course, Father Veras' hand in forming our men. They are so privileged to have him and his deep spirituality, which we'll get into. And here's some of the ways in which I think many would recognize as a popular name from the Magnificat publications and things that he's about. So just it's great grace. So, yeah, we go from a deacon ordination to a priesthood ordination. Last night at the Cathedral of Saint Ambrose, Father Stan Ashes. So I think a popular sensation since the Basilica Parish was well represented, as is his new assignment, St. Patrick's and Council Bluffs as well. So they sent a bus of 50 people over to greet their newly ordained priest. So
is so cool.
He better feel the love,
that's
there. And so Father Joel McNeil will be continue his formation as his first pastor. But Deacon Stan, now Father Stan, brings a lot of gifts. Today, I'm kind of involved, Gene. I haven't been getting the miles outside in the saddle, but I'm going to do it again and suffer a little bit on the Biking for Babies local ride, starting from St. Luke's. Well, let's go 48, because that's a nice number. And maybe add a little 2 more, and then we get a nice half century. But no, we'll do the High Trestle Trail again, end up in Woodward and turn around. It's a wonderful event, sponsoring for Intervisions, Martha's House of Hope, Roos Harbor, and the Agape. So all 4 of those longstanding partners in that local ride, but through Biking for Babies. So even if you're not riding or you didn't have a chance to sponsor somebody, if you would like to, you could look at give.bikingforbabies.com, and I'm sure they would be happy to accept your support of pregnancy resource centers here
never gonna say
in
no.
central Iowa. So the great work that is being done there.
Yeah.
So unlike last year, where I had the 75th anniversary Mass for St. Teresa's, I get to kind of chill for a little bit and then head down to Hamburg St. Mary's, to the other corner of our diocese, for confirmation. So that'll kind of bring the confirmation season to a graceful pause for a little bit. But
because you've been every weekend.
Well,
which is wonderful.
It's been a great blessing as well. But and we think of next week, anticipating our nation's 250th anniversary. I hear $800 million of fireworks haven't been set in store on the National Mall. I don't know. And they've corrected the water algae problem there as well. But as though there'll be many choruses of God Bless America sung at ballparks, historic sites, parades, and churches. For me, I find particular delight and hope in the Republic. These stanzas from America the Beautiful. America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty and law. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. So a prayer and a song, and I think people will be maybe lifting a barley soda or two, and our staff event with the Iowa Cubs next week. Looking forward to that as we might come together. So lots of wonderful things, but just again, our witness to what really matters and the truths that are self-evident, but that we don't make as human beings, that come to us by God's great gift to us. Looking forward to Father Veras. He appears in many ways. His Holy Week meditations for us, the vigil that is there, and Jesus, as he comes away, he's on the place where the hungry crowd saw waiting and begging for food. Jesus didn't look upon these people as an annoyance, but as the very face of his Father. He recognized in the presence of that crowd the presence of his Father, relating to him, loving him, expressing his will, which Jesus knew would be greater than what he himself would have planned. While the apostles wanted to send the people away, Jesus embraced the circumstances and thus affirmed that all reality is a sign of his Father. That's our hope for every newly ordained priest and every priest, that kind of spirit of mission and that disposition and docility to the Spirit. So I have not yet read Father Veras' most recent book, The Word Made Flesh, Foreshadow, Fulfilled Forever, but maybe he'll give us a few morsels from that and much more as we look forward to that conversation.
We'll take a quick break, and when we return, Father Richard Veras will be joining us. He is the Director of Pastoral Formation and Associate Professor of Homiletics at St. Joseph Seminary, Dunwoodie, New York. And he has joined us for the transitional diaconate of Luke Moen, seminarian for the Diocese of Des Moines. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. On today's show, we're visiting with Father Richard Veras. He's the Director of Pastoral Formation and Associate Professor of Homiletics at St. Joseph Seminary in Dunwoodie, New York, and who joined us for the ordination to the transitional diaconate for Luke Moen, a seminarian for the Diocese of Des Moines.
And so his imprints there and his pastoral example and as a holy and zealous priest. So very much and grateful to you, Father Veras, right away because of the way in which you fed me spiritually through your reflections and other ways in Magnificat. So thank you for that. But were you always one given to a kind of literary English orientation as you were growing up, an appreciation for things as a boy, or?
Oh, yes. I mean, films and novels. I studied English at Hofstra University. So, the importance of the arts and literature is very helpful, and very helpful for preachers, because the humanities, it gives you a human heart it helps you with a human heart with which to preach.
Yeah. So, and the good people of Holy Spirit Creston and St. Edward Afton will have Luke Moen, who himself is very much into literature and
Luke
novels.
Luke is a voracious reader. He really is. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And takes full advantage of the culture in New York. Theater, opera, ballet, art museums. All three of the Iowan seminarians, they probably engage in more of that than the New Yorkers. When you're from a place, you don't take as much advantage of what it has to offer.
Well, and that was my hope, that this would be a cosmopolitan experience. It wouldn't deflect from their earnest pursuit of their studies and other work, but they aren't just holed up in their room either, that there's
No, not at all.
There.
I'm very impressed how much they've engaged what New York City has to offer.
Yeah, and the wealth and the palette of pastoral opportunities, apostolic works that's available to you then as in your role, because that's not an easy task sometimes to have these opportunities and relationships with various places where you can place them in.
Yes, and we've got wonderful, wonderful supervisors. I often will tell the seminarians, pay attention to your supervisors, because our seminarians are working in prison ministry, hospice ministry, rehab ministry for those addicted to drugs and alcohol. And I'll tell them, your supervisors are working in these very dramatic spaces full time, and notice the joy that they have, which is only possible because of the faith that they have. But this summer, Matthew Joel is at Memorial Sloan Kettering in Manhattan, the very famous cancer hospital. Luke will be at a parish with Hispanic ministry, and I believe Kyle is in Mexico.
In the Bronx, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
When they come back for the academic year, the seminarians from further dioceses get a weekend assignment in a New York parish. So Luke will be in a very heavily Hispanic parish, St. Brendan's in the Bronx, that he's very enthusiastic about.
Yeah, and it's a great asset. So that will obviously shape the discernment of the personnel board when the day comes that he's back with us in the diocese.
I'm sure.
Now, I digressed a little bit. We were talking a little bit about your personal background and Hofstra University. There's no minor seminary program at Hofstra University.
No. So I discerned my vocation to the priesthood. I graduated from the university. I wrote advertisements for a little while, and then discern my vocation to the priesthood.
You were Mad Men then? You were
I worked for a toy company, so I was the in-house advertising writer for a toy company, and about 3 years in, I discerned my vocation to the priesthood and entered the seminary.
And were there any particular things that sparked that for you, or it was always there based on the family and the?
I think on some level it was always there, and at a certain point, I wanted to be a hero for Christ and go be a missionary somewhere. So I looked into the Missionaries of Charity Fathers. Mother Teresa has an order of fathers, and it was very clear that was not for me. And I was not. The parish priesthood to me seemed so humdrum, so sort of local, so sort of boring.
Well, okay.
No, what happened was I met there's a lay movement, Communion Liberation, that you're familiar with because you just had the Des Moines meeting. And the fact that was a lay movement, that really opened my eyes. Everyone is called to the encounter with Christ. Everyone is called to give themselves completely to Christ, whether you're giving yourself completely as a lay person, as a married person. And that really awakened in me a passion for the parish priesthood, because I thought, I want to announce it's not just for the monks or the nuns or people in missionary lands. It's for everybody, and it almost becomes more striking when you see Christ present through ordinary people, because you realize he's really become flesh and really dwells among us.
And and there's drama all over the place of the Paschal Mystery unfolding in these ordinary lives,
Absolutely.
for people and the depths that are there. So,
and the parish priesthood touches on. There's so many aspects of ministry. You're jack of all trades. You're doing everything. Mm-hmm. You're doing hospital visits to the sick, communion calls, education, young people, adults. It's really quite amazing.
And of course, for me, I was privileged. My late uncle, was a diocesan priest, so I saw his joy and everything. Home parish was staffed by conventual Franciscans from Louisville, but New York Metro, all sorts of religious orders. Did you feel any kind of tug on your heart to any particular religious charism?
It was just the Missionaries of Charity Fathers were the one I looked into, and once it was clear that was not for me, I had really let go of the thoughts of the priesthood for a while. And in fact, I remember I was living with two roommates at the time, and one of them was trying to break into theater and film. And he came home and he'd gotten a part in an off-Broadway play, and he was thrilled. And I remember I was jealous of him. I congratulated him, but I was really jealous, and I thought, well, why am I jealous? I don't want to be in an off-Broadway play. So what am I jealous of? And I thought, I'm jealous of the excitement I see in him. And I thought, well, when did I have that excitement? I had that excitement when I was looking into the Missionaries of Charity Fathers. However, it's true that particular charism, working with the poorest of poor in that way, was not for me. And I thought, but you know what? Priesthood was wrapped up in that. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been the priesthood. And as soon as I had that thought, I had a sense of that excitement again. So I went to my spiritual director, and who I had told, parish priesthood seems boring to me. And I said, I think I want to look into the diocesan priesthood. And then that led me to New York.
And the fact that you had a spiritual director, you were already intentional in terms of growing your faith and cultivating this relationship with Jesus.
Well, at Hofstra, I had gotten very involved. We had a very small, it was called the Hofstra Pro-Life Club. Hofstra is a very secular university. But we had this pro-life club, which, as you can imagine, was mostly very religious Catholics and Christians. And those friendships were really important for me. So the formation from those friendships, really formed me. So when I left college, I wanted to keep my faith alive. And I knew I moved into New York City for my job, and I thought I can't do this on my own. I need people who can help me. I need friends. I need a spiritual director.
Tremendous. So, so fast forward, you moved through seminary, and did you go to St. Joseph Dunwoodie Seminary?
I did. Yeah. Your seminarians will laugh at me because I'm always bragging about this. I was from the 100th class ordained out of Dunwoodie. And Bishop, you've been to Dunwoodie, and the graduating classes line the hallway. Yeah. And they're all in black or brown frames, except my class's frame is in a golden frame because we were the 100th class.
The golden boys. Yes.
Which I brag about much too much to the seminarians who roll their eyes when I remind them of it.
So assigned parishes early on. Was there some teaching on the side even then in high school or anything?
Well, I started at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in the Bronx, where we had masses in English, Spanish, and Italian. From there, I went to Staten Island as an assistant. But whenever I've been assigned to a parish, I've always taught in the school, and I've taught a religious ed class. And in fact, I advise my homiletics students, teach as much as you can, because teaching helps with preaching. When you've got to make the faith relevant to fifth graders, it helps you.
Yeah.
And so I really loved teaching. And then after 9 years in parish priesthood, Archbishop Cardinal Egan at the time asked me to go into high school teaching. So I spent a number of years at an all-boys high school, a year at a co-ed high school, then went back and became a pastor in Staten Island, and then was asked to go into seminary work.
Staten Island, that jewel there.
Staten Island, the pearl of the Atlantic.
Were you there at the parish 9/11?
I was in Staten Island at the time, St. Joseph, St. Thomas. What I remember from that day was when we heard many New Yorkers, when you heard a plane hit the buildings, the first thing you think, some small plane hit a skyscraper. And then when it became clear, I didn't see TV or hear radio the entire day because it was a school day. And the school was in session. And what happened was when news began to break, we were getting calls from many parents. We had parents who were working in business in the World Trade Center, many dads who were firefighters. And parents are calling and saying, please don't let the children know what's happening. If they've lost their dad, mom wants to be the one to tell. So we brought them all to the church. So now we're in the church praying. The little kids are a little bit scared. The 8th graders are annoyed because they know something is going on, but we can't tell them. We wanted to honor the parents' wishes. And so parents began to come and pick up their students. It probably wasn't until the afternoon I even looked at the television. Then I remember that evening, there's an ice skating rink on Staten Island, and we were told, so many things were happening that day. Things were happening so fast. We were told that they might use the ice skating rink as a temporary morgue. And would I and another priest go to where the ferry comes in to receive, any bodies? And I'll never forget, we drove to the ferry. It was, I guess, early evening. And we pulled up, and there were policemen, and they said to us, if I recall correctly, one of them had tears in his eyes. They said, "Fathers, there's no bodies. There's no. Bodies were vaporized or burnt. We thought there were going to be these bodies coming over on the ferry. There were no. Remains were all very small. And a month later, talk about the importance of the parish priesthood. The New York City Fire Department requested that two Catholic priests be present at Ground Zero 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was filled by many of the fire and police chaplains, but they needed more. They sent a letter out to all of the Brooklyn and New York priests, would you go and cover a shift? And so every priest in Brooklyn and New York agreed to cover a shift. So a month later, September 26th, I remember, I was there to cover one of the shifts at Ground Zero.
Compelling
but
things.
It was
seared into your memory, and
absolutely,
the love that's there. And I don't know if these are stories you have occasion to weave into your teaching and homilies at the seminary, but eventually you're called to be at the seminary, your alma mater,
yes,
and pastoral assignments. But in the meantime, also recruited to write for Magnificat and becoming part of that great team, that great resource that's there.
Yes, and that all happened. It was all very providential. Father Peter Cameron, the first editor of the English edition of Magnificat, was a homiletics professor at St. Joseph Seminary. In fact, I was in the first homiletics class that he taught, and we remained very good friends. And when he was assigned to Magnificat, he was telling me about it. And so because of my friendship with Father Peter Cameron, I just started writing. I think I was in the first issue and have been writing on and off since 1999. I think it began in January 1999. So that was just my friendship with Father Cameron. And then I directly took over from Father Cameron teaching homiletics at the seminary.
And that's something that, the lived art of this that you've been practicing so well, and obviously reflective and bringing your literary and other oratorical skills to bear, but no formal degree in homiletics per se beyond that, advanced study or...
No formal degree in homiletics.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to be elitist in this,
right.
But I'm just saying, that how I think advantageous for the man to have someone who's just living the art of preaching and the Word is incarnate in you.
The best advice I got from Father Cameron, and I had the advantage of having all of his notes and all of his research, but he said to me, which was so helpful when I started, he said, "Rich, the main thing you need to remember, you're not teaching them to preach like you preach. You're teaching them to preach like themselves. You need to help them find their voice." And that's, it's so important. One of the things that Father Cameron taught us is you've got to preach the way you speak. If you have this sort of formal preaching voice, it turns people off. It has to be you. And that's been beautiful. Homiletics is such a privilege to teach because everything comes into play. Everything comes into their theology, their pastoral experience, their history, their temperament, the literature they read, everything, their prayer life, everything comes into play there, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And the seminarians come to that class with a certain amount of humility, because they're going to preach to their classmates.
Yes.
And, no, because seminarians,
Swimming
like
in
all
the,
young people,
swimming in the shark tank.
yes, all young people know everything, and the older people don't know anything. And so, but in homiletics class, there's a good humility and receptiveness, and an eagerness.
Have over the years, you're observing the program for priestly formation. Have you moved it up in the curriculum of studies so it's earlier in their formation, or does it still happen more toward the latter half?
In first theology, they take a speaking course, a speech course, which is a regular speech course, which is helpful. In second theology, I'll give them a brief talk on giving daily reflections, because when they begin summer assignments, they'll often do daily reflections. We do, in third theology, is when they have a full year of homiletics, and we sort of have that following their scripture studies. So in the first semester, they study the Gospel of Mark in spring semester of second year. And so all of their homilies in the fall semester of third year are in the Gospel of Mark. And then in the spring semester, now that they've studied the Gospel of Matthew, they begin to preach from the Gospel of Matthew. And then once they're deacons, they rotate preaching at the seminary masses. And they'll receive feedback from me and other faculty members. So that becomes also a learning curve.
There is assessment that's happening. So,
well, we're going to take a quick break, and we will return with Father Richard Veras, who's here visiting us from St. Joseph Seminary in Dunwoodie, New York. He's here for the ordination of now Deacon Luke Moen. So we are very grateful to have you visit us. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
I remember the first visit, Father Ross Parker and I, to St. Joseph Seminary Dunwoodie, and Bishop Massa and yourselves and the rest of the faculty were consummate hosts for us. I got a call from then Archbishop Cardinal Dolan. He's trying to make this out. He says, Bill, we got a lot of rural places up in the Archdiocese of New York. Do you actually have rural placements?
We do. We do. We've got some northern counties, Sullivan County, which is pretty rural.
Is that right?
It's pretty rural, yeah.
Yeah. Our guys probably don't need as much of that. They can have that when they come back here in the summers.
Right.
We've got corn and soybeans, so we're good.
Yeah, there are probably a few different crops there in the northern part. Yeah. Are you involved in the formation side as an external forum or internal forum?
External formator.
Okay.
So a formation advisor.
So what does that mean, external versus internal?
So spiritual director is internal forum. So whatever the seminarian discusses with him is like going to confession. It's internal forum. Then each seminarian has an external formator, a formation advisor, that will also meet and talk about their life, how formation is going, how things are happening. And that's for the purpose that when the faculty votes on a seminarian, one of those voting members knows him really well because of those advisement meetings. I mean, we know all of them. We eat meals with them. We share life with them. But the external forum advisor really can give context and background for a lot of things about the man. And the men, when I came into seminary formation, I was impressed. In general, the men of today are very transparent with their external formators, are very trusting. I mean, if you're not transparent, you're just going against yourself, because you want the seminary faculty to help you make this discernment.
Yeah, and to trust the Holy Spirit, and that this
exactly.
Bringing things into the light of day as well. But no, and I think generationally that's true. And I found in my latter years working with college students, they're much more transparent and open. Sometimes almost TMI here.
Yes. When I first got into seminary work, it was refreshing and mildly and surprising. but I was happy for it. I was happy for it.
And so one of the blessings of St. Joseph Dunwoodie is that it's a medium-sized seminary. It's a close-knit community, I think.
Yes.
And there, one of the challenges for people like yourself is there's not an unlimited faculty here. It is a core group, but a lot falls on your shoulders, and you wear a lot of hats at the seminary.
Yes, we'll joke that frequently we'll receive letters, giving you a new assignment that says "in addition to," and then ... So, I'm the director of Pastoral Formation, which is also a beautiful assignment, and associate professor of Homiletics, an external formation advisor. All of us on faculty, all of us who teach, all the resident priests are all either a spiritual director or faculty advisor as well as teaching, which I think is so important. I'm also the director of seminarians for the Archdiocese of New York, particularly for the seminarians that we have at other seminaries. We have college seminarians in New Jersey. We've got a couple of guys in the Basilica program in Theological College in D.C.
And in your spare time? Yeah. He laughed. I don't think he has any.
No, but it's very. I feel very privileged with the assignment in the seminary.
And there is that sacrifice. You may have pastoral engagement, helping out sacramentally, but it's more of a hidden life, than the typical parish priest. And so it's an act of generosity on your part to respond to this call. But the amplification of the impact that you have in the lives of these men, and you've been at this long enough, you feel your spiritual fatherhood in a way, through the fathers that you've helped to form.
No, that is definitely one of the most beautiful aspects of seminary work. Knowing that you're serving the church in that way, and the sense of the privilege of being guides and mentors to the men is really wonderful, and the privilege of seeing a man grow from first theology to fourth theology is amazing, especially in the pastoral assignments, because when a man is going to go to Calvary Hospital, Luke was there last year, where it's a hospice. Everybody there is dying of cancer, and they go or when a man is going to go to prison, they go and they're quite understandably nervous. When they're there, they begin to find themselves comfortable in these situations they never expected to be comfortable in, or to feel confident, confide, with faith. That the sense of that Christ goes with them in these difficult situations.
And that's a tribute to the Holy Spirit, but also to have wise and compassionate people like yourself accompanying them. So thank you, Father Richard Veras, for what you're doing with our Des Moines men. They haven't been hazed at Dunwoodie. They've been very much well received. And so thank you for the gift, the mutual gift that is.
This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thanks to our guest and to all of our listeners in Iowa, Nebraska, and perhaps New York, wherever you may be listening to the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.